Hey, what is up, Nightmare Corner? How you guys doing? I hope you guys are doing well. I know I am. So I want to get into a topic that you guys already kind of know from the thumbnail and things like that. So we talked about remakes yesterday, or in the other video we talked about the Pumpkinhead remake that's coming out. Well, yesterday was kind of interesting because I went to Disc Replay. I was kind of chilling out, waiting for the husband to get out of work, and ended up going to Disc Replay, ended up doing a little walkthrough. Well, I found a movie that was very familiar to me, and that was Faces of Death. It was the 30th anniversary that I found on DVD, and I picked it up for 10 bucks. Now, that movie I have watched a little bit when I was a kid. I finally got my hands on it because that movie was so controversial. It was banned in like 43 plus countries and things like that. I remember being a kid and that movie being almost like an urban legend. Like, did it actually exist? Was it an actual movie? I remember around the school, like, kids would talk about this horror movie because there was a bunch of us into horror, and nobody knew if it was real or if it was fake. It was just like one of those kind of like creepy pastas, if you want to think of it that way. But I remember it being so controversial, and a lot of people were kind of iffy on it and things like that, about the movie showing actual deaths and things like that. And it's so crazy, the history of Faces of Death. Like, I can see why it was controversial, and the stuff behind that movie is crazy. But the reason we're talking about Faces of Death today is because I found out yesterday when I was doing research on the movie and things like that after I watched it, is that they are planning a remake. Now, back in May 2021, that it was discussed that Faces of Death was going to be into a movie. They were going to do the remake, and the same people that brought you the movie Cam are the same people who are going to be bringing you the remake for Faces of Death. So we're going to go through a couple things in this video, and it's going to be kind of interesting. If you guys are kind of squeamish and weak, weak-hearted, or faint and things like that, I suggest you don't watch the video, because some of the topics in this video might get a little bit dark for some. But there's a couple things I did want to talk about. First, we need to talk about the original movie, right? We already know that it's controversial. We already know that there's some real death scenes in there and some things that might make people a little bit unsettling. I watched the film yesterday, and I will tell you that even though now, most people have debunked some of the things that are in this movie, there are a lot of things in this movie that are real. And there's a lot of things in there that are a little bit unsettling, from open heart surgery to dead bodies that were exhumed, and mummies and stuff like that. It's some stuff is kind of difficult to watch if you don't have the stomach for it. Now, a couple things that I do want to mention is that this movie, back in what was it, 85, I believe it came out. There was two things that happened because of this movie, and this is kind of like the dark side of the movie. So in 1985, a school district had to pay two families $100,000 because a mathematics teacher showed the original movie to his students. And two of the students were so scared after watching it. They were afraid of death. They were scarred. It was something that shocked those kids. So I know the teacher was suspended, but he wasn't fired, and the school district had to pay $100,000 to those families, which is crazy. A year after that, there was a 14-year-old who actually bludgeoned a classmate, or another student, I believe. Yeah, it was another classmate, to death with a baseball bat or whatever it is that he used to murder this kid. And he blamed Faces of Death for the reason of why he wanted to kill this kid, or why he wanted to do it, to kind of see what it felt like and what it was really like, which is kind of dark. So we had two things that kind of were linked to the movie, to Faces of Death and things like that, which is really crazy. Like I said, it's a very controversial film because there's a lot of things in there that when I watched it, I didn't watch all of it when I was a kid because I don't even remember how I got a copy of it. I think it was like at my uncle's house. I was able to watch it on VHS, and pretty much like the first 10 minutes I ended up turning it off when I was a kid. But I remember this movie because it was, like I said, it was so controversial. Like, I remember video stores and things like that. Like, it was so hard to find the movie. So either A, they were hiding it because they were ashamed that they even had it. But there was so much backlash with this movie, and it was so controversial with the things that they were showing and things like that. And it's crazy because the other sequels that this movie has spawned, Faces of Death 2, 3, and so on and so forth, claim to have even more violent scenes that are real. And it's just overall a crazy film. I suggest if you do watch it, make sure you're not eating anything, because there are some things in there that are a little bit like, whoa. And it kind of goes back to like Cannibal Holocaust, right? There's a lot of things in there that were unsettling, and there was like one scene that I was not able to sit through because it made me feel uncomfortable and things like that. But this movie, I will say I was able to sit through it. You know, now that I'm an adult and I can actually critique it and watch it, it's really crazy because what it is, it's basically about a doctor, like a pathologist, who is fascinated with death. You know, he performed an open heart surgery in the beginning, and he wanted to see the different faces of death. So he kind of put in, it's kind of like a mockumentary where, you know, he goes around and he's documenting and narrating like all these different clips and scenes and things that he's seen through, you know, the Green Inferno and you know, police footage and the morgue and things like that. So it's kind of like ABC's of Death, right? Where you see the different scenes, like each letter had its own death. It's kind of like that in a way. But it's of a doctor that's kind of showing you and telling you the things of the like the many faces of death that you can see around the world, from animals to things like that. And I think that was one of the other that was definitely one of the other controversial topics, because, you know, there's dog fighting in there. There's, you know, where somebody beheads a chicken and, you know, they show the chicken running around with his head cut off. I mean, there's just so many different crazy things that are in that video. But there are, like I said, they are planning a remake. And if I'm not mistaken, which I'm going to find it in here because I'm kind of reading this off to you guys because it's a lot to kind of memorize. But the reboot, and I'll pop this up on the screen for you. The reboot will aim to be a clever meta take on the material that will likely look more akin to the mainstream web-based psychological horror Unfriended, Dark Web, or Megan is Missing than an actual Mondo movie. However, the remake's association with the brand, famous for claiming to profit off real-life death, may prove problematic for development. Since the advent of the internet, the proliferation of shock sites makes the movie's surrounding controversy seem tame in comparison. But a conventional mainstream remake of this distinctly countercultural Mondo movie will likely struggle to recreate the original's outsized cultural impact and may prove unable to escape morally dubious shadow of its predecessor. So that's crazy alone, because it is hard nowadays. And, you know, I hate to say it, but the country and people are soft nowadays, right? We're easily offended. We're easily, disgusted and find ways to, I don't want to say make excuses, but find ways to blame somebody, or this isn't right, or this is wrong. We're a lot more sensitive as a country than we were back in the 80s, I can tell you that. And I believe that if they were to make an actual remake, and we'll get into what they're going to do as far as this remake, but I think if they were to actually do something like that, it would not be too good, because a lot of people would not want to watch something like that. But at the same time, it's crazy because we blame Faces of Death for actually having real deaths and things like that in the movie. But how many times have you guys come across Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or something like that, and you see something of an actual shooting, someone getting shot, videos from other countries that make it onto Facebook without being flagged, of just violence and just craziness that you see. And I think that if they were to remake it, not word for word or scene for scene, but if they were to remake something like how the original is, it definitely wouldn't be successful. Now, don't get me wrong, they'll have plenty of content to share, because there's sites you can go to and different things like that. You can find just the macabre and the dark, but I don't think it would be successful. However, the upcoming Faces of Death remake will be helmed by Issa Mazet, I hope I didn't butcher his name, and Daniel Goldhaber, who respectively wrote and directed the psychological horror film Cam. It is currently unclear when the remake will be released, but according to the creators, and here's the plot will follow a heroine who recently suffered a trauma working as a moderator for YouTube-style site. So for a YouTube-style site, her job of flagging and removing potentially offensive content takes a dark turn when she counters a group recreating the deaths featured in the original 1978 movie, but are the killings real or simulated? So that right there, I mean, let's read that again. The plot follows a heroine who recently suffered a trauma working as a moderator for a YouTube-style site. Her job of flagging and removing potentially offensive content takes a dark turn when she encounters a group recreating the deaths featured in the original 1978 movie. But are the killings real or simulated? That right there, and I'm not really sometimes one for remakes, I'll tell you that. But I think that is a very good modern day take on this film. So you're not really recreating the actual film. It's kind of like a retelling in a way. I would look at it as more of a sequel, if you think about it, because now they're talking about, she comes across this group that's uploading these videos that are recreating the murders and deaths in Faces of Death. That is very possible, especially if you guys been with me and we talked about the dark web. That's possible today that people can do that. And then it's even possible, I mean, we know that we have people like that work for YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff, that their job is to flag inappropriate content, whether it's racist, if it's, violence in any way. I mean, they'll block you for any different kind of word that you use on the internet nowadays. You go to Facebook jail and things like that. So I think that's very cool that they're doing that, because you think about it, how many, it takes a psychological toll on somebody that their job is to flag videos like that, right? Think about being someone who probably hundreds and thousands of posts and videos a day that they go through that they have to flag or block or restrict because of the things that they're seeing. Think of how many videos you've seen that snuck past on Facebook. People getting shot in the head or stabbed, or different violent things that are happening in other countries. And I'm not talking about like riots. I'm talking murder, or that other word that I don't really want to use, what they do to themselves and things like that. But think about it. Some of those videos leak onto Facebook and things like that. So imagine being a YouTube moderator or Instagram moderator and having to see that all the time. So yeah, you would be scarred, and I'm sure that they even have like their own psychiatrist to help talk them through that type of stuff, because the stuff like that is just like a little bit of a leak from the dark web, and their job is to make sure that that doesn't touch Facebook and doesn't come to YouTube. But like I said, some of the stuff does leak through, some of it doesn't. But imagine having to be that person that sees the craziest things and have to, that's your job to flag that stuff. So I think that's really cool that they're doing that take, because that's more realistic, right, than most movies you would see. So the fact that they're going to have like a YouTube, I mean, it's not going to be YouTube, it's going to be a YouTube style company or website, but you're going to have somebody whose job it is to flag it, and that comes across these killings that are a recreation, like inspiration from the movie, right? And that's why we kind of talked about Faces of Death first and talked about the controversy and what came of it. So we had the teacher with the 100,000 having to pay the family, then we have that kid that was inspired to see what it was like to kill somebody. So that makes total sense. And I think if that movie comes out, like I said, we already have the directors and stuff like that, I think it's going to be really good. I don't know how graphic they're going to go. I don't know how violent they're going to go. I mean, this almost seems like a movie that I hope that they push the boundaries as much as they can to keep their R rating, or, that borderline of R and X rating, right? So I say it all the time. I love to see when movies push the boundaries. I love to see movies just do things different, like Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, right? That was different. We're breaking boundaries to make something that nobody else would make. Who would have thought to make Winnie the Pooh a horror movie, right? So pushing the boundaries, and that's something that as a horror fan I enjoy, is that we need to push the boundaries, right? We need to make horror scary again. Don't put this comedy stuff in there to, break the tension. No, I don't want that. I'm a horror fan. If I watch a movie, I'm watching it to be scared. I'm watching it to be disturbed and unsettled. Like, that's what these movies are for, right? To experience true horror in the safety of our own home, that we can scream together, we can talk about it together. And that's why I love horror. And I really hope that this movie does happen. Now, like I said, this information was from back in 2021. Of course, we know COVID has messed up a lot of things from filming and things like that, and made it difficult for some people, not movie theaters, but movie productions, to actually make these movies and to get things rolling. So we already know that, because Pumpkinhead was 2021. The script is done. We're just waiting for that step to be taken. This one, obviously, the plot's already there. I would assume the script is done, and we have our directors and our writers and things like that. So this movie is pretty much ready to go. It's just we need to update as far as filming. But like I said, I'm really anxious to see how this movie is going to go. I honestly want to see it because like I said, I watched Faces of Death for the first time completely yesterday, and that's a movie that if you are gonna watch, obviously viewer discretion, but it's crazy because it's one of those movies that make you think to yourself, is this real or is this fake? Like, it's up to you to decide. And like I said, there's a lot of things in there that are kind of disturbing and crazy. So overall, guys, I just wanted to share with you guys a little bit of the Faces of Death remake and kind of talk through that and dig into it a little bit. I'm excited, honestly. When it comes to me and horror, like, I love pushing the boundaries. I love watching these movies that are claimed to be banned in 43 countries and things like that. And Cannibal Holocaust definitely made me realize why that was banned, and so did this movie, because there's a lot of things in here that are unsettling. But it's up to you to decide. You watch the film, you can look it up if you want to kind of find out which ones are fake or real. Obviously not all of them are real, but there are a lot of it that is real. And what scares me the most is that, now I'm kind of going down this rabbit hole of Faces of Death, and I want to see the sequels, because the sequels are talking about there are more real, violent things in there. And I almost feel that, like, as a horror fan, you kind of have to watch that, right? And it's kind of like the things that we talk about over at I Like Scary when we talk about the, the real horror of things, right? And, I mean, this stuff is real. Michael Myers is based on real serial killers. So is, Jason and Freddy and things like that. So we're only getting the make-believe part. But what happens when you look at the real life part of it, right? That's the scary thing. But, like I said, guys, I wanted to touch and kind of give you guys an update on Faces of Death. Like I said, I never knew they were even going to come up with a remake until I was searching around last night about it. And I just had to share with you guys, because we did the Pumpkinhead remake. Now we're having Faces of Death, which is crazy because this is like the first time that they're going to remake a movie that's been banned and had so much controversy. So I'm curious as to see what they're going to do. Maybe even have like throwbacks to the original. Obviously, it says they're going to be copying some of the murders and things like that in the original 78 movie. But it'll be cool to see. Like, they're probably going to do, like, maybe flashbacks, or they're going to have, like, the movie cameo scenes, right? You're going to see the original, like, this was the original movie. They're copying it this way. So there's just so much stuff that's going to happen, and I'm excited for it. I've never seen Cam, but if these guys are the ones that are going to make the Faces of Death remake, Cam is definitely a movie that I'm going to have to watch then. Because I want to see if they can pull off Cam, how that'll kind of give you an idea and me an idea on how they're going to handle Faces of Death, right? You can see directors' visions and how they film things, and when they take on a new movie, you can kind of expect on how they're going to film that movie. So that's really exciting. Like I said, guys, if you want to watch Faces of Death, you can find it online. You can buy it on Amazon. It's a lot more easier to grab now than it was back in the 80s and 90s. Like I said, I remember in the movie, the movie rental places, they wouldn't even have them on the shelf. They would have the movie, but it wouldn't be on the shelf. So it's kind of like one of those secret things that you had to know they had it if you ever wanted to watch it. But yeah, guys, I think that's it. I think I talked your heads off long enough. I appreciate each and every one of you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Have you seen Faces of Death? Are you ready for the remake? Is it something you would watch or you won't watch? Let me know in the comments. I love talking to you guys. I love seeing your guys' opinions on everything. But with all that being said, I took up enough of your time. Thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you as always. And once again, don't be a monster. I'll see you guys later. Be safe. Take it easy.